house comforting her. Notice how quickly she got up and went out. They followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and those that had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid it? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance, and said, take away the stone. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's a bad odor, for he's been there 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. And then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe you sent me. And when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus came out, his hands and his feet wrapped in strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off those grave clothes and let him go. Let me talk to you for just a few minutes about what we know about Larry. And in this passage of Scripture, how there are similarities. You see, Jesus wept. That's not how we would consider weeping today. We would call that he's cried. Because he remembered his friend. He remembered the times they'd eaten and the times they'd fellowshipped. Back when we were just packed, we used to meet over at the apartments and have lunch over there. One day I was there and sitting at the table with Larry and a few others, and I had just a very slight stroke. And I remember not knowing where I was, and they called the ambulance, and I said to Larry, stay with me, okay? Will you just stay here? And he stayed as long as he needed, as long as I needed him to stay. So they got me in the hospital and got me in the ambulance, and we got to the hospital because Larry had a heart for people. You heard that today. He had a heart for the underdog. He had the desire to go into places where nobody really wants to go. I remember going with him a few times into the prison where I was preaching there. And if you've ever been into the prison, there's this place that they have this sign on the wall that said, if you go past here, we ain't negotiating for you. And if somebody comes and grabs you. And then they take your wallet away. And I said to somebody, well, why do you take the wallet away? So we can identify the body. Great, I don't want to go here. I'm not going in. And we went in, and there's this line down the hallway, and we were to walk on one side of it, the inmates walked on the other side, and I was like I was on the top on the side of a cliff. I was walking like that as we came through. And Larry went in there all of the time because he loved the underdog. Raised support. My goodness, that's hard. Trying to get in church budgets and because if you've ever tried to get money out of a church, it's got to go before a board, and they've got to take it before the Lord, and the Lord sometimes may wait a year or two before he answers. So you're running on faith for the longest time. A couple of phrases that the family described their husband and father and grandfather, a loyal, devoted husband and father. A grandfather who loved them unconditionally. And so death causes us to realize exactly what we've got. It also teaches us to review. Because as Jesus encountered each of the people in the passage we just read, they probably took an inventory of their life, not an autopsy, an inventory. And what they were doing before Lazarus died, and they realized that stuff wasn't really important. Because you see, priorities take a difference when a loved one passes away. And all of a sudden the level field, the playing field is leveled, and we're on equal footing. And review our own lives, because one of us, all of us actually, will walk through the same door that Larry walked through. I just tell you something, we are all 100% terminal. Nobody's getting out of this world alive. Jesus asked Martha, and then later Mary, do you remember the things I told you? Do you recall what we talked about in eternity? Do you trust me? Man, trust is a hard thing to get, and it's an easy thing to break. And so he asked them, are you believing me still? Larry had a great faith. Larry used to carry a fork in his pocket, his front pocket. And you'd ask him what the fork was, and he would tell you that several years ago he was at a meeting that was gathered around lunch, and usually at the talented church building, the ladies of the congregation prepared the food and served the food. And that there was a lady who was in the line at the very beginning, and what she said to him was, don't throw away your fork. And he said, how come? And she said, because there's dessert coming. At the end of everything, there's dessert. Because the best is yet to come. So Larry carried the fork in his pocket. Not because there might be some banana pudding in the offering. He kept his original fork for that. But because he truly believed that the best was yet to come. He's using that fork. Sometimes it's very easy for our beliefs to get a little bit fuzzy, to get a little uncertain, because life is short. Larry didn't plan to get sick. It wasn't in his dreams. He didn't want to die. I mean, I understand sometimes people want to get out of their pain, but nobody really wants to die. Years ago, my father would pick up my father was a preacher, would pick up a hitchhiker and would teach him the gospel while he was riding along. And him and another man, one of the teachers at the school that we go to be preachers, picked up a fellow that we lived in West Texas in Lubbock, wanted to go to La Mesa, which is about 75 miles south and west of Lubbock. And so they were talking to him, and I wasn't there. They just told me about this. And so my father said to the fellow, sir, I have one important question to ask you. Do you want to go to heaven? And he said, someday, yes, but today I want to go to La Mesa. Now, nobody really wants to die. And yet our lives are very fragile, aren't they? See that in football players. Run down the field, crash each other at high speed, get up like nothing there, and then somebody can be stretching and blow out a knee. Somebody could be driving along. Talked to Terry Daly last night about some of his relatives who were in a horrible accident. It's a vapor, really. Our veterinarian, who's since retired, George Woodley is his name, told me that one time Jimmy Buffett sang in a song, and I looked it up, and I can't find Jimmy Buffett singing it in a song, so I'll go ahead and give it to George Woodley, that said, whether somebody's in your life for 60 minutes or 60 years, it's always over too soon. Life is unpredictable. Life is brief. Life is fleeting. Life is all we've got. A bunch of students were sitting around listening to their professor, and the professor got out a big jar, and he said in front of the group of these high-powered achievers, he said, it's time for a quiz. He took this jar and put it on the table. You may have heard this before, and got a dozen fist-sized rocks, and he put them in the jar one at a time. And when it was filled to the top, so that no more rocks would fit inside, he said, "Is this jar full?" And they said, "Yes." And then he said, "Really?" And he reached under the table and he pulled out a bucket of gravel and dumped some gravel in there and shook the jar and added some more gravel and shook the jar and added some more gravel. And then finally said, until it was up to the brim, and finally says, "Is the jar full?" They weren't going to be fooled again. They said, "No." He said, "Good." He reached out and brought a bucket of sand and put it in the jar, and all of the places that the gravel and the rocks didn't cover, The sand filled it up. And then he said, is it full now? And one of them said, probably not. And with that, he reached out and got a jug of water and filled it to the brim. And then it was full. He said to the class, what's the point of this illustration? One of the students said, I think it's no matter how full your schedule is, if you try really hard, you can fit some more things into it. No, teacher said that wasn't the point. He said the point in this illustration was when it comes to life, make sure you get the big rocks in first. Because if you don't get the big rocks in first, you're not going to be able to get them. They got the big rocks in first. Debbie. Ian. By the way, he was a police officer with the Lubbock Police Department. And ministry. And God. And the underdog. And his kids. And his grandkids. To know our destiny at the end of life, all else fails. John 14:1 says, let not your hearts be troubled. Jesus talking. Do you believe in God? Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And that where I go, you know. And the way you know. Somebody once said life is like a trip on a big ship. You get on, fish for a little while, look around, meet the captain, and then they go back to the dock and it's time to get off the boat. Well, he got on the boat, he fished, he looked around, now he's meeting the captain because it was time to get off the boat. I would like to ask the family, those who wish to speak, to get up and say their words. Then after that, we're going to have where you come up here if you want to say something and you say it. Now what we're going to ask is that you keep it brief. And here's how this is going to work, okay? I'm going to stand up here like I stood behind Veronica. If you've gone too long, I'm going to pull up to the side of you. If you don't hush, I'm going to put my arm around you and we're going to go this way. And so now I want you to know I was at a funeral one time and Carl Lewis was there, and the athlete, and he got up to speak, and it was like he was daring me to move him off the stage, and he talked for as long as he wanted to. Now, I am not stopping Carl Lewis from saying some words. He's got the gold. The only gold medal I won was at church camp in an arts and crafts contest, and so. Well, we will have those, and then there will be some instructions, and we'll have a prayer, and you'll be dismissed. And so, Melody, why don't you go first?
Hello, everyone. Dads are someone to look up to, someone to follow, someone to admire, someone to be proud of, and someone to brag about, someone to hold, someone to cry with, someone to learn from, and someone to respect, someone to listen to, and someone to talk to, someone to try and impress, laugh uncontrollably with, sometimes rebel against, and someone, most of all, with whom to share everything this wonderful life has to offer. I can remember as a young girl, at Christmas, Santa brought me this amazing Barbie dollhouse. And the day after Christmas, he already had plans for that dollhouse. And being the engineer that he was, he built a rotating platform complete with AstroTurf. So that way all I had to do was sit there and turn it around and not move. In retrospect now, I think Santa brought that dollhouse just so that he could build that contraption. Yeah, and I think it brought him more joy than it did me. Dad was a cheerleader for his family, for his friends, for his community, and most of all for the Lord. He put 4 kiddos through Westbury Christian School: me, Ian, Maggie, and Shelby. Attending our sports events was a real big thing for him. Even after all of us graduated, he still made it a point to attend as many WCS games as he possibly could. And let me tell you, he was quite a vocal and sometimes ornery character. There was a specific game that I recall. WCS was playing a basketball game at Second Baptist School. We were a little bit late and the gym was packed. It was a playoff game, but Dad spotted some empty seats right in the middle of the Second Baptist home team. He had us sit right in the middle of the lion's den. And let's just say, in true Larry form, managed to heckle the refs and the surrounding crowd and still make friends. Tad was a character for sure, but he was so much fun to be around. When the community gardens and the Westbury Christian Athletic Complex in Southwest Houston came to fruition, you could always find him on the tractor at either location, proudly working the land. He truly enjoyed doing that. Sometimes I would be the trailing vehicle when he needed to drive that Ford tractor down Fondren from the athletic complex down to the community garden. And to this day, I'm not quite sure if that was legal. But you know what? It was surely a sight to see, and he truly enjoyed being a servant. His presence was big and commanding, but saying that he was a gentle giant is an understatement. He believed in second chances, forgiveness, and grace. Nobody can be perfect, but Dad was as close as to being the most perfect dad anyone could have. Dad's love was unconditional, and this is something we will cherish and take with us forever. His kindness and generosity will be remembered by all who had the pleasure of knowing him. Today we certainly have shed a few tears. Today he would certainly have shed a few tears to see how many of his family and friends have turned up in person and online to celebrate his wonderful life. He would also have been very surprised, as he was actually a very humble man. And we are incredibly blessed to have him as our dad, brother, husband, granddad, and friend. It's difficult to do a thorough tribute to someone who lived so much and was so many things to so many people. But remembering you is easy, Dad, because I do it every day. Missing you is a heartache that will never go away. You are with us in our hearts forever. And Dad, I hope you find out the answer in heaven. Every time we go to a restaurant, he'd like to give the wait staff a little grief. And if he ordered swordfish, he would always ask if it's speared or netted. And nobody knew what that was all about, so hopefully up there, Dad gets his answer. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out today to celebrate the memory of my legendary dad. I feel so grateful to have had as much time with my father as I did.
So on the pamphlet it said to be informal, and so I told my family, I said, I won't do any notes. That may have been a mistake. You go up and as I'm sitting there, I'm running through listening to all the things that people tell us about how they saw my father. Well, my father, through my eyes, I see the man who grew me from knee high to a grasshopper. to what I stand before you today as a humble man and a man of God. And I hope that I hope I live my life in a way that shows you that. Whether that be while I'm wearing the uniform of the Lubbock Police Department, or whether I wear the uniform and the cloth of the Republic as a captain. There's a running joke about why I'm not wearing my uniform, things of that nature. Well, we got the call pretty early, and while it was happening, and my wife said, "Hey, we should go," and I said, "Okay, let's go." So we hopped in a car and we left. Conveniently left everything I needed. It was very simple. It was very simple, but maybe that is a point in time where I look at it as God saying, you do not need to identify as those things. You need to identify as a son of your dad, and as a son of the Father. So when I speak to you today, I speak with you with humility. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. I see so many people out here who had impacts to my life. It takes a village to raise us children. And we were wild. We had a great time. We have a great time. And Dad always had a great time. And I know that right now he's laughing because the gifts we gave you are the seeds to plant and to bring up new life. And as he moved from working in the fields of the missions to the fields of the community gardens, I hope that you take a moment and let him work in the fields of your heart. As we remember Larry Frank today, my dad, who gave me a work ethic. And his favorite saying to me was, "This too shall pass." David, I want to thank you for speaking and being up here to facilitate this. It really means a lot to us to be able to remember him and to take the grief that we have now and turn it into a joy and cultivate that joy for later. But thank you.
Does anyone of the family wish to speak? If somebody would like if anybody from the crowd would like to get up and say a few words, you are now welcome to do so.
You don't have to drag me up here.
You know, that was one of the things that I was going to say, that anytime you shared with Larry and spilled out, you know, stuff that was going on, he would say, "Amen." And this too shall pass, for sure. There's so many things. I remember one, you know, as I was coming up here, I was sitting there and thinking, I remember when we first started PACT, and we were trying to still figure out the identity of PACT, what was going to do. And it was, again, when we were still there at the Fondren storefront, you know, I remember my old captain, Bruce Williams, he's here, and, you know, he told me when we first started this, I still remember him pointing his finger at me, and he said, I want to see cops I want to see clergy in the seats with cops talking to crooks. Okay, how's this going up? You know, I'm trying to figure out. And it all came together, you know, and we started out police department clergy team, and then later we narrowed it down to police and clergy team. And anyway, I remember this one instance where I got a call from the station. Some officers had a guy they didn't know what to do with. They didn't want to take him to jail and everything, but he was there and he said he had a problem and he wanted some help. He said, "Do you guys help?" I said, "Well, let me check." I said, "Oh, we want to help. Let me call somebody, you know." And I called up Larry, because Larry was one of the first guys in the, you know, and he had his organization, Restorative Justice. And I said, "Larry, this is what we got over at the station. This guy wants help. He wants to get to a drug rehab and everything. Do you guys do that?" He goes, "Yeah, where's he at?" And he said, "Just a minute." I think he said something about I need to drop my son off. I think back, you know, and he says, "I'm going to be over there." And I remember meeting Larry over there, and he went up and he just gave this guy a hug. And he took it. to the rehab. We didn't want to take him to jail. That's not what we're in business for. We're trying to help people. There's the last thing we ever wanted to do. And I'm going to tell you, with Larry, the Packmobile, and all the things that we did, I've seen him at murders, suicides. We had officer-involved shootings that he was at. We had a kidnapping that night that we were searching for that baby during Christmas time, over there for Walmart. He's out there all night long serving. And he's a great man.
Amen.
We're going to miss him a lot. And Larry, can't wait to see you again, brother. Love you, family. You know that we're here for you. Curtis is always here. HB, he's got precinct 5 on the side now too, because I'm not a trader. I just got trying to get another pension. So, anyway, God bless you all. Love you. Thank you.
I had the privilege of knowing him before any of you did. He's my big brother. He called me his baby sister. He was Santa Claus before you all knew him as Santa Claus. I was so mad. I was 10, he was 18. Christmas Eve, he goes on a date. I was so mad. I was mad. How could my brother go on a date on Christmas Eve? Well, it was one of our things from Grandma's house to our house. If the light was on, Santa Claus had been there. We got home, Santa Claus had been there. Years later, he played Santa Claus. He didn't have a date. So, yeah. And when he went to the military, that, it was hard. We lost our dad when he was 20. I was 12. And he took on the dad figure. Thank you all for being so kind to me. And I've learned so much. I live in Kansas. I knew there was only a phone call away or a text away. So, thank you all.
We are Alan and Hazel Potford from Westbury Community Garden. We've learned so much about Larry today, some of it which I had suspected. I've had many a conversation while he sat on the tractor and I leaned on the wheel. I just really enjoyed knowing him. I'm a farm girl myself from Massachusetts. My brothers still have stuff. And they know stories about Larry too. And I'm so grateful to have known him and to know more about him today, and to know about the chaplaincy. I can't tell you how thankful I am.
Just a couple of words about Larry and I, because we have a lot in common. One of the things that Hazel and I do is we try to work for the community in various things. My job is kind of building trails, maintaining the trails along the various bayous and so forth, so WCP out there. Larry's job was to work on things with the guide, and occasionally we would intersect. And his tool was the tractor, and my tool is the lawnmower and the logs to try and keep the trails clean. And the thing that I would like to most point out to you is, if you look at that picture, and if you look at me now all dressed up, if we met out there someplace, we'd have to introduce ourselves because we were always in work clothes. So Larry was a great guy. He and I shared plenty of cleanup times, and he was never more happy than when he was on his tractor and I was out there with my tools trying to help him pick the stuff up. That's all we have to say, David, because it gets too close.
Hello, my name is Veronica. I'm Veronica Hernandez's daughter. Thank you first to the family for sharing him with us for so many years. He did a big impact on all of us. I would see him at every event, every function. He would treat everybody with such kindness, such love, and it is wonderful to see that. And I want to say a bit of scripture that I know is true in Larry right now. And it is in 2 Timothy 4, 7 and 8. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day. And not to me only, but also to all who have loved his spirit. And we know right now he has already received that crown of righteousness from the Lord. And thank you. And I love what his daughter said. He has been many different things to many people. And I know his legacy will live on all of you and all of us, and we will remember him always. And on behalf of my boss, Councilmember Letitia Plummer, I want to present a certificate of recognition to the family. And I'm going to just read the last portion on her behalf. All will remember him by the kindness, love, and commitment he radiated to all. Therefore, we are honored to recognize Larry Dean Frank as he has left an everlasting impression on the hearts. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Larry Frank's youngest daughter. My dad was stubborn. He wouldn't have survived this long without being a little bit stubborn. And when you get to talk to all three of us and everybody else in our family, you'll start to realize that it rubbed off on all of us. And he loved all of us and everything that he was and is today and what he's left behind. And I appreciate y'all giving him the opportunity and giving us the opportunity to hear everything that he's done and that he's worked on. And it's nice to see how much he's touched all of you. And I only got him at home. I got my stubborn dad that worked in the garage. You know, he came home and Ian and I were picking up the tractor the day after, and he looked at something my dad had jury rigged to the blue tractor. And we're like, oh, yeah, that's a dad creation. You know? Like he had his touch on everything. There's a little bit of him in everything. There's a little bit of him in this church and him helping clean up the church, be a part of the church. There's him at the school. I don't think there's a place I could go in Houston where I won't see my dad. And I won't see it in my nephew's eyes, in my son's eyes. And God, I really hope that they all get his stubbornness. Because it's a wild ride with some Frank stubbornness running through you.
Simon, be careful what you wish for.
You know, something that they grew up, my dad and mom told me is that your kid's gonna be 10 times as stubborn as you. And knowing how stubborn my dad is, and how stubborn I am, Ian and I are in for a wild ride. That's gonna be fun. But I want to thank all of y'all for coming out and loving him as much as we did, and being with him when we were at home, and y'all took care of him. Thank you. Hello, my name is Kimberly Meyer.
My name is Esperanza Chipanmanza.
And we work together at Shambaya Amani, which is, I think, the newest community farm that Larry helped start. And I just want you all to know, and you all to know what he did. Without Larry, I don't know how this farm would exist. This farm feeds a community of refugee women from Congo primarily, from Burundi, from Rwanda. And we've been able, through Larry's help, to start a community field, to plow the land, to expand that field, to plant a berry patch, grapevines. Without Larry's tractor that was held together, like you said, with baling twine and I don't know what, many families would not have been fed over the pandemic with the food from their homeland that they love. And that food now is going out to markets throughout the city, feeding other immigrant communities with the food that makes them feel at home. And the thing that I also remember many conversations with Larry on his tractor and me leaning against it, and the little snapshot that I had into his larger life just filled me with this deep appreciation for the humanity of him. And so we just want to express our deepest gratitude to him in this public space before everyone, and to let you know from our experience what he gave to so many people that you may not even know. And we have a saying that Esperance introduced us to, and that has become kind of our motto at Shambaya Amani, the Farm of Peace, which is Umoja ni Nguvu.
Umoja ni nguvu.
And this means we are stronger together. And I know that Larry embodied that. So thank you so much, and we're with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Pata. I work for the Open Records Unit. On behalf of the Open Records Unit, you are just heard condolences to the family. Larry was a rock, and started mentioning. He was stubborn. There are many times that, and respect Chief. Hey, Chief, what you doing? You know, you're doing this all wrong. Larry, what am I supposed to do? No. Help me out here. But Larry, he was our go-to man. He had plenty of knowledge that he did pass down to us. Each single one of us in one way or another. He would be missed. And that was on the professional level. On the personal level, how you doing, Joe? I just tell him I'm here. He would tell me you're doing a great job. I said, okay, Larry, thank you. You know, he would give me that word of confidence in the personal level. Forget word and just in the personal, just hang in there. You're doing a great job. But again, we have the Open Records Unit serving notices, and he'll be missed.
There will be reception after. service, so my bad there. There is a reception that will be held in our fellowship hall, and to get there, you just walk down the same hall that you walked in, and the last door on the right is our fellowship hall. There'll be cookies and things like that, and so we encourage you to linger and visit with the family. Chief, thank you very much for being here. Debbie, thank you very much for everything that you guys have meant and mean to Westbury for over the